welcome to Literary Prospects, where we talk to authors and literary professionals about books, publishing, and the writing life. I'm Kelley Vick. I'm the host of the program, and in just a moment, it will be my pleasure to introduce today's guest. But first, a reminder that if you like what you hear, please do take a moment to subscribe. It helps us out, and you can make sure you never miss an episode. Also, we've opened a Literary Prospects shop, so if you're looking for bookish shirts, totes, and gifts, please check that out at literaryprospects.etsy.com. And to grab books featured on the podcast and check out more curated book lists, you can visit the Literary Prospects bookstore on bookshop.org. We'll leave all those links below in the show notes. And now, let's introduce today's guest. Courtney Maum is the author of 5 books, including the groundbreaking publishing guide Before and After the Book Deal, and the memoir The Year of the Horses, chosen by the Today Show as the best read for mental health awareness. A writing coach, an educator, Courtney's mission is to help people hold on to the joy of art making in a culture obsessed with turning artists into brands. Passionate about literary citizenship, Courtney sits on the advisory councils of the Authors Guild and the Rumpus, and runs a best-selling Substack about publishing that you can sign up for at courtneymaum.com, where you'll also find her online classes. Courtney Maum, thank you so much for being here today to talk not only about your own work as an author of acclaimed novels, short stories, and memoir, but also the good work you do helping other writers to understand the landscape of writing and publishing. I normally start out by reading a few reviews or blurbs, so I'd like to do that for your body of work.
Oh, thank you.
Good Morning America called your recent memoir, The Year of the Horses, beautiful and lyrical. Today called it cathartic and honest. And Shondaland says it's artfully written and deeply relatable. The New York Times Book Review calls your novel, Costa Alegre, delightful. Publishers Weekly says it's rich and delectable, and the Washington Post calls it taut and lush. And Literary Hub calls your book Before and After the Book Deal the how-to book for a new era of publishing. And Publishers Weekly says it's invaluable to new writers seeking advice and support in navigating their first publication. So I would love to start out talking about your publishing guide, Before and After the Book Deal, which is just a fantastic resource for early career authors and has also been named one of the 10 best books for writers by Vanity Fair. So what inspired you to write a guide to publishing for authors?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me and for that very generous introduction. Yeah, well, to answer your question, it's a long answer in terms of years, but the answer itself is short. That just there was nothing that existed in terms of a guidebook or wayfinder or even GPS for not just debut authors, but authors in general. And I found that as I started publishing books, publishing in literary magazines and publishing op-eds and articles, these are two beasts that are related, right? They're the same species, but they are different beasts. So it's when I started publishing books in the traditional format, with a literary agent. And then I was very fortunate. I started out with the big 5 publishers. I don't have what might be considered a traditional path to publishing. I don't have an MFA. I went to college, but I did not study English or writing. I didn't take writing workshops. I studied comparative literature and French translation. I lived most of my 20s in France. And I was just always writing on the side and kind of DIYing it. My experiences with writing workshops and things of that nature didn't come until, I think I was 30 years old, maybe. And, but I'm a very hard worker. I'd always, from a very young age, wanted to be a writer, wrote on the side for myself creatively. I started at a pretty young age, writing for magazines. I was a copywriter for decades. So just sort of always thought you have to read a lot and you have to work very hard at your writing, right? And then if you work hard enough and you do have to find some connections, that realization came later,
Mhm.
you'll get an agent, you'll get a book deal, right? That's what I thought back then. But any dreams or hopes that I had or ideas about what the whole process would be like just ended at the book deal, right? Because I had no idea what
Mhm.
else to imagine. So when I got the book deal, which is what I'd wanted all my life, I realized that every single like day part from then on out was uncharted territory for me. I
Mhm.
had just started making writing friends. I had so few writing friends because again, I spent all of my 20s like out of the country, not in a literary scene.
Mhm.
I worked for Corona. I was like a beer promoter, like was not
Sounds like
in this.
fun.
It was fun. I was not in the scene. So, I mean, when I tell you, number one, that I knew nothing, but I also didn't even know when I was doing something wrong. It's just simply like etiquette wise. I
Mhm.
had no idea what I was doing. And I sort of quickly learned that there weren't a lot of people who were going to tell me if something was right or wrong. Thank goodness my agent is and was that kind of person. I remember the first kind of come to Jesus moment I had was that very exciting moment that some people are offered, which is, you get a book deal, especially at the big five level. Often they'll invite the author in if it makes sense geographically to come in and meet the team, right? Typically, this is in New York City.
Mhm.
So I was able to do that. And gosh, it's so embarrassing. I think I hope I didn't know. I think I only said this to my agent because she was saying to me, like, oh, the team wants to take you out to lunch and da, 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 da. And I remember responding to her. I think it was a private message to her. I was like, hey, just so they know, like, I'm all business. I don't have to be wined and dined. We can have the meeting. I don't want them to feel that, they need to, I don't know, serve me Caesar salad, whatever the hell, right?
Mhm.
Which, first of all, I would never say that now. Wine and dine me, please, publishing, right? Like, what the hell was I? What the hell was I writing? But she was horrified. She's like, Courtney, oh my God, this is part of the dance. Like, you make relationships, you go out, you eat with these people. I just, I just had like worked from home all alone. Had always written all my books in a complete tunnel, no feedback. I didn't have like writers reading, really alone. Um, and so I wasn't very well socialized. I was like a wild creature.
Yeah.
And little by little, as I started publishing more and more, like actual books, I realized like, wow, okay, I am actually not alone because even people who have gone through the MFA programs or really seasoned in workshops or have writer friends, there's still such a taboo, um, somewhat encouraged, right, by the publishing industry to keep writers in the dark. Like nobody at that point talked about their advances ever, ever. You never did that. You didn't talk about money. You didn't ask for money if you were being invited to speak. So, it was all very eggshells. Um, and yeah, so little by little, I think I just started taking notes of everything I didn't know, all the mistakes I'd made. And then I started because I started making more friends, thank goodness, in the writing world. I started taking notes on the things that they were telling me. And little by little, I sort of became a person that people could you complain to. Um, I started writing articles about the publishing industry, kind of arguing for more clarity, less murkiness. And yeah, and I wrote one article about the whole debut experience for BuzzFeed that got a lot of traction. And but I was the one who proposed the idea of before and after the book deal as a concept. And I will say that the gatekeepers, agent, my agent, even editors that I'd already worked with, people were like, oh no, no, no. Like people don't need that book. There's not
Really?
that many questions. And I thought, well, this is really telling that the editors and agents are saying this to me because at this point, I'd sort of interviewed in terms of conversations just had over many, many years. I mean, I don't know, probably 100 writers and people who were New York Times bestsellers, all the way down to people publishing with micro presses and zines and things like that. And everyone just felt like we have on blindfolds, we're fumbling around trying to pin the tail on the donkey. We don't know what the heck we're doing. We feel competitive towards our friends. There were just so many yucky feelings. What is a blurb? If someone blurbs me, am I supposed to send a gift, right? So I thought, well, I should write a guidebook. But yeah, so the gatekeepers were, I had to really, basically I had to write the book,
Mhm.
um, and show them what it was going to be. Because I think in the beginning, some people I was talking to might have thought that it was going to be like one white woman's experience in publishing, which that book, it never was going to be that.
Yeah.
And, you know, if people have read the book, you'll see that I'm basically exist as a real estate agent, kind of bringing people through the different rooms of
Mhm.
publishing. And some of the rooms are dirty, dirty toilets, and some are ballrooms, right? It really brings people through pretty much every possible outcome.
Mhm.
Yeah, so a long answer, but yeah, there is a tiny portion of a sort of memoir drive in that book because it was very cathartic for me, you
Yeah.
know, talking to all these people and realizing like, no, I'm not alone. Actually, we've all done like incredibly awkward or hurtful or financially devastating things. Yeah.
Well, and you spoke to, by the end, I think it was nearly 200
Yeah, I
authors.
mean, I think there's 200 interviews that probably made it into the book. I did speak to like hundreds of people from all over the literary stratosphere for it, which was
How
really fun.
how did you choose who you were going to talk to and find the time to do all of this and
Uh-huh.
then condense it all into this book that is so readable and easily digestible for
Oh, well, thank you.
newbies?
Thank you very much. I mean, my copywriting background certainly helped. I was trained by the best. I started off at Victoria's Secret. And I don't think we were allowed to have more than like 45 characters for a description of an article. So, um, I mean, I'm joking, but not really. Copywriting really taught me to take on a huge amount of information and digest it into really economical, concise writing, not always with a sense of humor. I think I added that. You have to have a sense of humor to work at Victoria's Secret. Um, but yeah, I mean, luckily by the time this was before and after the book deal was my fourth book. Um, and it came out in 2020, right? So I was what, 40 years old. So by that point, I'd had, maybe 15 or 14 years of having friends, right? And in the writing world. And I love to make friends. So luckily I knew a lot of people that by that point, and I knew a lot of generous people who would say, "Hey, I'm not the right person for that, but talk to whoever."
Mhm.
And the other thing that I had going for me is, I had some highfalutin names on my wish list, like Anthony Doerr or Roxane Gay, for example, whom I mean, my personal connections with them were not, Roxane had edited a story of mine, and Anthony, I'd written about a book of his for the National Book Award. So, but it was like email connections, right?
Mhm.
Um, but it's a testament to how badly this book was needed that almost all of the A-listers were like, absolutely, let's have that talk right now. It wasn't at all like, oh, this is a really busy schedule. It was like, yes, literally, like, here are 3 different times I can talk this week.
Mhm.
So the calls happened. Most of it I think I did everything via, almost everything via phone call. I love the phone actually, and I think it's really important to hear. I mean, it's important to have a transcript of what someone's written you, definitely. But in this case, it's almost more important. I needed to hear the people's voices so I could understand whether they were being sarcastic or ironic or
Mhm.
shy or whatever, and I could make sure that their words were being used correctly. Whereas if it's just like shot to you by in an email or a direct message, which I do not reach out to people via direct message. Everyone, you do you, but I will not be doing that. Um, yeah, so I don't, it happened so quickly, and I think back then, so it came out in 2020, but I would have been working on this in like 2018, right? I mean, I just remember focusing so hard on this book that it happened fairly quickly. And then, of course, at that point, so the publisher was and is Catapult, and
Mhm.
the Catapult has since shifted. But at that point, Catapult was like the place to partner with for this book because they had this incredible array of writing programs that was headed at that time by Julie Bunton, and it was Julie Bunton who acquired the book. So I also had in Catapult just an amazing resource of if I needed to say to them like, hey, do you know anyone who does voiceover acting? Like I'm not sure I have the best contact. They'd be like, "Bup, bup, 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 bup," and they were very helpful when I had knew what topic I wanted to write about, but needed the right spokesperson. And then, I'd outlined the entire book. I knew the flow of the book and the content I wanted to cover before I started interviewing people. So that certainly helped. And absolutely once in a while, something that someone said or someone they'd recommend to talk to me about something um, would lead me in a direction that would or wouldn't make it in the book. And most people went on record. There were a couple of people who were like, yeah, I'm happy to talk, but I need to remain anonymous. Most of them are editors and agents
Mhm.
for totally understandable reasons. But I was really excited and grateful by how many, incredible talents were willing to just, yeah, of course, put my name in there. That was
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
yeah. Well, speaking of people willing to help, you have said that you're passionate about literary citizenship.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important? And for those listening who may not know what literary citizenship means, what does it mean to you?
Um, It means partaking in the community that you are expecting or hoping to support you. So it will mean different things to different people. But for me, as a writer who wants people to, some people to pay for my Substack newsletter content, for people to pre-order my books, buy my books, recommend them, review them, come to my readings, right? Um, I need to do all that stuff more than I'm expecting other people to do it for me, right? So I I keep a call like an Excel sheet and try to make sure that I'm buying books from a variety of presses and from independent bookstores pretty regularly. I make sure that I am subscribing to literary magazines, even if I don't have time to read them. That I'm paying for some people's Substacks, like
Mhm.
tit for tat. I mean, that makes it sound a little strategic, but um, I I get very frustrated when I coach writers,
Mhm.
and I usually don't enter into a working relationship with people who, if I say, well, what are you reading right now? Oh, I don't read. I only just write my own stuff. I don't want to be distracted by anything else. When's
Mm.
the last time you bought a book from an independent bookstore? Oh, no, I use Amazon, right? Oh, what writing conferences do you go to? Right? Like if you're not a citizen of the country of literature, then you're just kind of lurking or trolling or being an egomaniac. So yeah, I think I am very passionate. I'm very, very passionate about literary citizenship and helping other people who need and or deserve it because like I said, when my first book came out, I had no idea what I was doing. And there were a lot of people, including incredible writers we found to blurb my book because I didn't know anyone, So I do believe in, paying it forward and helping all the boats to, what is it? The boats, rising tides lift all boats.
Yeah.
Some boats should sink. some boats need to sink to the bottom of the ocean, but the little tugboats and uh coracles I'll certainly help rise. Yeah. And I also like I don't know, I think that being a really good literary citizen also means not believing that there's just one path to publication. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not hitting the pavement for only the big five or the indies. Like I've self-published. I recommend to a lot of people self-publishing, hybrid publishing, micro presses, academic presses, um, the big five, there's just I think good literary citizens these days would not be arguing that a traditional book deal with an agent and a book deal is like the only way to get your story out there
Mm-hmm.
because it's just so hard. It's not going to happen for the majority of people, unfortunately.
You've mentioned so much that you felt like you didn't know when you first started going through the publishing process. Is there one particular thing that sticks out as something that you really, really wish you had known
Yeah,
going
yes,
in?
yeah. So I've always been a person that really thrives on this honesty and being candid, and my word like means a lot to me. So
Mhm.
um I just write just absolutely candid reviews of the books I was reading on Goodreads.
Mm.
And I did not realize that if you want to be a writer in the world, publishing and getting blurbs by people, you do have to kind of get in line with just 5-star review only, right? Because
Mhm.
even the 4-star reviews, you go and try to beseech someone that you 4-star reviewed for a blurb, like they'll remember that you left a star off, I
Mhm.
guess I wish I knew back then how I didn't know that people read their own reviews on what is it, Amazon and Goodreads. Because I don't, so I don't know. Again, I was all alone. I was like, I don't, so I assume nobody else does. And that's not true. So yeah, definitely a lesson that was hard learned was if you don't have anything nice to say about someone else's book, either become a professional book reviewer and, do it in a way that is being vetted by other people or whatever, or just don't write anything on. Yeah.
You've said that you are hell-bent on preserving the joy of art making in a culture obsessed with turning artists into brands. Can you talk about that?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's like all I talk about these days because it's just become completely untenable.
Mhm.
I'm fortunate to have a lot of subscribers to my newsletter on Substack and really love being in touch with my community there. And I hear from so many people like, Courtney, I'm hearing from agents that if I'm in memoir or nonfiction, like just to not even query unless I have minimum 10,000 followers on some newsletter that I apparently like created last night, and I need
Mm.
20,000 followers on Instagram and however many on Twitter, which is absurd because like people have left Twitter.
Yeah.
Um, and and so there's all this fervor and panic around, especially I think with people who are middle-aged,
Mm.
um, and not necessarily like extremely online, as the kids say. There's all this pandemonium around like, oh my God, all right, I have to build a platform overnight. And gatekeepers are not, including agents and editors, they're just not talking enough about quality storytelling.
Mhm.
So I'm seeing work from people who have a really polished website. Um, they've built their newsletter on whatever. They're doing the things and they're working really hard at their social media, but the writing's not there. Either it's sort of gassy and is well over 100,000 words, or it's all interiority. If it's a memoir, all of the actions in the past. And I don't know whether it's that the agents and the editors either, number one, don't want to hurt people's feelings, or number two, aren't taking the time to read the material that either has been sent or that they've asked for, um, or are just so focused on platform they don't see anything else. But like it, the data supports that a wonderful story well told
Mm.
will make it to the right audience.
Mhm.
It just will. I mean, we have so many examples. We have more examples of writers who have managed to have a breakout book without any platform or even having a name that resonates. Like the woman who wrote, Delia Owens, right, who wrote Where the Crawdad Sings.
Mhm.
She was of a certain age when she wrote that book. She's not like a person on the scene. She wasn't like a
Mhm.
contributor to Lit Hub or the Rumpet or whatever, right? Um, I haven't even read that book, but I certainly know it resonated with a lot of people,
Mhm.
right? That just can't be denied. Colleen Hoover, right? Like
Mhm.
rather famously rejected by everyone she sent her books to. So she's like, well, screw it, right? I'll self-publish. But it wasn't like she was some big influencer online, right? She was just
Mhm.
writing content that certain people love. And I could go on and on and on about these examples of people whose platform was simply some life experience, some dogged determination to just keep writing, regardless of what, to keep writing. In a Word doc, not online, not for newsletters, just keep writing, keep being a person in the world. And they worked hard on their novels or short story collections or whatever it was. And it was just too good to say no to. And so the fact that the gatekeepers are saying no before even really getting the pitch for
Mhm.
the story or sort of taking the pulse of like the person in front of them, I think is absurd, frankly. It's absurd. It's just not platform, real authentic platform that will hold up hopefully against like cancellation or um a book not doing well or a book doing super well, right?
Mhm.
That kind of platform takes decades, takes decades to
Mhm.
create a platform like that. And that there's all these classes and coaches, and, and even the way that the editors and agents say, like, well, go develop a platform and come back to me.
In a
I
week.
mean, in a week, right? Go find 10,000 followers. But that's so stupid because you can buy followers, but they're
Mhm.
not going to pre-order your book.
Yeah.
I've written about this on my newsletter recently. The concept of 1,000 true fans is so true, and most published authors aren't going to get past. They can have 60,000 followers on Twitter, but they're still generally just going to be about 1,000, 1,500 true loyalists who will actually answer your damn pre-order email blast,
Yeah.
right? So you're not going to get 60,000 pre-orders because you have 60,000 followers. I mean, even Beyonce, however many million followers, she's not going to have the equal amount of people buy a book.
Mhm.
It just doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. These are not always real people. Sometimes people follow you because they like your hair or they really like to see pictures of your dog, and they're not. So I wish, like, there's so many editors at the big houses, especially, who don't even have time to edit anymore. Um, Agents who can no longer provide developmental edits because they're so busy talking about marketing and brand partnerships and I Substack all the time that,
Mhm.
that I'm finding like I'm getting these books and I'm reading them and inevitably somewhere around the middle I'm like, oh my God, the editor has left the building. Like this book it was not edited all the way to the end, or it's 20,000 words too long. And I think that comes from people just throwing in the towel and saying, oh, well, I don't know, Amy here had an essay go viral, so whoops, this will just take care of itself. But no,
Mhm.
we need agents and editors and writers to truly work together on art.
Yeah.
Right? We are not making wearable Snuggie blankets,
Yeah.
right? We are making art. Not everything, not all books have to be, you know, beautiful or even literary, but again, they're not Twinkies, right? So yeah, I'd like editors to be allowed more time to edit, agents to be allowed more time to like really work with their writers on developing staying power and confidence far beyond stupid platform. I mean, what are our platforms going to do if, I don't know, Elon Musk buys up all the social media spaces and nobody wants to be on them anymore? Then what is your, precious Twitter following mean? What's it worth? Right? We still, I think, have to exist as human beings and artists first, second, third, right? And then you can talk about being discoverable online, but you do have to have humanity. I think that that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. I, absolutely. But let's say that the great thing has happened and a young prospective author has an agent and there are multiple publishers interested in the
Mhm.
book. Along those lines, what do you recommend about choosing who to go with, you know?
Well, I mean that's the dream scenario,
It's the
right?
yeah.
Um, I mean, most people are going to go for the highest bid. In this economy, you have to have independent wealth to turn down an option, a book deal that's significantly higher
Mm,
than another one, right? So most people will just have to go for the highest bid. I will say um, that the working relationship and your esteem for your editor matters more than people think. Like I've gone for less money on a couple of my books because I trusted the editor. I just knew that I was not going to be asked to make compromises on the vision I had for the book, that I was going to be safe. And also, and this is deeply important to me, that the person was going to be reachable. Like for me, when I talk to people and I hear like, oh, well, I've been waiting to hear from my agent for 2 months or she hasn't got back to me, I get hives. Like I am a type A Virgo perfectionist. If we're going to work together, you need to be a texter and a phone call. I mean, like
mhm.
I'm not waiting 2 months to hear from you. I just literally can't function like that. So I do think it's really important beyond the money. If you can see past the money, know your communication style. If you're someone who really needs someone like to be available and respond to your emails in a timely manner, there's nothing wrong on the editorial phone calls with asking people like, hey, what's your availability like? Like, I'm not talking about being best friends with people or what and I'm not talking about tiny little problems, right? If you have a real crisis or something that truly needs an answer, are you the kind of person that will be available to me or be honest? Is it kind of like once a month I'll hear from you? Um, and I would definitely tell people whether we're talking about getting an agent or an editor, it is a huge red flag if the person says to you, you're a genius and this is perfect. We all want to hear that, and the conversation should start that way, but it should be, you're a genius and the book is going to be perfect, but
Mm.
there's work to be done. And anytime I've been in the hands of someone that's like, oh, this is so great, we could almost go to press tomorrow. When I was younger, I was like, haha, of course, because it is great. But now that I'm older, and the scales have fallen from my eyes, I realize that that's just the mark of someone who doesn't understand the market as in such a nuanced manner that they need to be able to help you out in a really tough market, and doesn't really have your best interests at heart, because no pre-publication draft is perfect, right? There's always more work that can go into it. So you definitely, if you're having editorial conversations with possible uh, publishers, be careful if you're only hearing compliments.
Mhm.
Number one, because that could shift. They could turn around and once they acquire your book, be like, okay, I know I told you I loved it, but in fact, I hate the ending and the book is too long, and you feel duped. But
Mhm.
also, if everything's wonderful, wonderful, rosy, rosy, they don't understand the world in which your book is being released, because very few things are wonderful and rosy. And
Mhm.
so you need a partner who's prepared to um, help kind of set your book up for success, right?
Mhm.
And that takes revision and revisitation of the material and the way it's being presented. Sometimes it takes revisitation of the title, right?
When it comes to signing contracts,
Mm, mm,
are
mm.
there
Uh,
any particular pitfalls that you have seen come up again and again?
I'm like turning bright red, because this is this is my weak point. I sign things without reading them. I've gotten better, but I got really burned. Um, I mean, this is a big question, right? Like, so in terms of answering the most succinct manner, you just want to make sure that you're owning your IP, your intellectual property, that you remain, the owner at every possible touch point.
Mm.
So your book becomes a film, it becomes a stage production, make sure that in your contract, first of all, you're being made aware of any options coming in, and that you will be monetarily, financially and then reputationally compensated.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and then I've signed a contract in my past where I didn't realize, like, I didn't realize, how can I put this without getting in a litigious situation? Um, just read your contracts. Like, this is something I'm pushing for. I'm on the Council of the Authors Guild, and we need more classes. We need agencies, literary agencies, to sit us down and really take the time in a half a day seminar to teach us about our contracts and what this legalese means, because they're impenetrable. So even if you do the due diligent thing and you take the time to read the 20-page document, it just might not make any sense, or what you think you're reading might not be what you think you're reading.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I think it's not just read your contracts, it's learn enough legalese, get someone to help you translate it into real world life, right?
Mhm.
Like, oh, it might not seem a big deal to, I have no idea. Like, our bonus language is really complicated, because the bonus language is if you sell past a certain amount of books in your book's first year on publication, oh, you get a certain amount of money. But the fine print is that all those copies are attached to BookScan, which is a completely imperfect way of
Mhm.
recording how many books you've actually sold. Everyone knows that it's, you know, uh, and a lot of times, like, editors will refuse to let you amend language that has been in author book deal contracts since the dawn of time, but you can still try. It's
Yeah.
still a signal to that team, like trying to have bonus language attached to royalty statements instead of
Mhm.
book scan is something that would have personally benefited me on a lot of contracts. Um, and so pushing back, getting your agent to negotiate for you will, number one, allow you to see if your agent's really on your team or not. And
Mhm.
it will signal to the publisher, like, okay, this person is not a pushover. And
Mhm.
sometimes it can go the wrong way. Sure, sometimes they can be like, oh, a difficult person. But sometimes they can start thinking, ooh, we were going to ask them to pay for their own book tour, but you know what? This person seems serious. Like maybe we'll at least refund their gas or whatever, right? Like, you don't want to, publishers are always, it's just monetarily interesting for them to take advantage of, to take as much as they can get, right?
Yeah.
So don't let them do that. And that definitely starts at the contracts level. And this is true also if you're publishing with a magazine. Do you get the rights back after a year? Like if you want to republish some of the content on your own newsletter or in a future-facing book, do you have the right to do that? Because you should put that right in the contract before you need it. You know, you have to think far out, right? Because you can't do it 5 years after the fact if it hasn't been in the contract. So, I mean, most gatekeepers will send you these agents and be like, I need this signed within the hour, and that's not fair.
Yeah.
We need more time and we need help. We really need help with education as authors on reading our contracts.
Yeah.
You know, God, I don't
Let's
know what
shift a
like
bit to talking about the
I'm
creative
getting a
work.
sunburn. Maybe it's the Zoom light.
Well, before you get a sunburn, let's talk about a light
Yeah.
burn. Let's talk about the creative work. What is your process like when you are working on a new novel? So you get the spark of an idea,
Yeah.
and then what? How does it go from that sort of spark of an idea for you
Oh God.
to
It's very
handing it over to
painful.
your
Are you sure you want to hear this? Oh, it's so painful.
I think so.
My novel writing is the worst. So, okay, I'm going to answer in a very specific category. I'm going to answer for um literary fiction that has a commercial chance, meaning like big five book deal, potentially lots of readers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I also write kind of arty, weird fiction, and that's a different game. If there's money on the table, possible money on the table, like this becomes, it's just a hellscape. So what I do is I get an idea. It seems like a great idea. And I write 3 chapters. Historically, always I write 3 like banger chapters. They're just always great. Like they work really well. And so then I get very excited and I swear I'll just like write the whole book in a fairly quick amount of time, really quick, like 3 months or something. And I will still have that amazing energy from the first 3 chapters, and I will send it to my agent. And my agent will read the 3 chapters and be like, "Oh, how did you do this? This is so compulsively read it." Oh my, nice text messages, and then silence, absolute silence, 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 silence. And I realize, oh God, I've done it again. The thing's gone completely off the rails. We'll have a talk. Generally, she'll pick out one element from the mess I've sent her that I wasn't aware was a mess. And she'll be like, build the book around this, and we'll talk through plot. And I hear it, like the words enter my brain. And then I try to make an outline to keep myself on track. Because my agent's really good on plot, right? And I'm not. And I have my outline, work really hard on my outline. I make it very perfectionist and Virgo and highlighted, and it's great. And then I start again. And the freaking process repeats itself. And I go completely off the rails. And I am not joking you. I do this for a year. I will make within a year 2, 3 novels that are full drafts and do not resemble each other and are very long. And it's only till year 2 when my agent's starting to get like, please stop sending me these things. They're not even the same book. Like, what is happening? Year 2, I tend to find the way, but it still is an endless like I have the characters, I have the plot. Year 2, I keep rewriting the book, but at least the book is staying the book. But then it becomes an excavation thing, and then with my agent again for a very particular type of book, we're actually trying to get money that you could do something with beyond just like pay a credit card bill one month. then when we're getting really close, like for instance in August, and I wrote a newsletter about this, people can follow along.
Mhm.
I sent her what I was positive because I've been working so hard on this book. I was like, I sent the book, right? So I thought we would be submitting this in September. But no, she was like, it's a whole second half needs tightening, which in her language, tightening means like burn it down, start again. It's not, I mean, in this
I was
case,
thinking
like, yeah,
tightening sounds good. That sounds
no,
like
no, not really. No, it's not. It's code for overhaul completely. Or at
okay.
least that's how I interpret it, and that is how I act upon it. So, oh, literally just today, I have enacted the I don't think of them as revisions. I think of them as renovations. Like I truly think of this all this as an architectural project.
Mhm.
Um, trying to build a house with a proper foundation, right? Just today, I completed the renovations, but then I I have to I'm gonna reread it and reread it. So yeah, it all my novels start out with the wonderful artistic drive, some point I'm trying to make, an itch I'm trying to scratch, because my commercial fiction tends to be satire, so usually there's some comment some judgment I'm trying to get across
Mhm.
about um America, right? Usually it's America. This book is no exception, but then I do so in such a bombastic manner in my early drafts that there's no plot. And guess what? You can't get the big book deals in fiction without a plot. I don't know, unless you're someone that I'm not, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just horrible. And I don't I like revisions, but the level of revisions I have to do to get these books in what my agent considers submittable shape is brutal. It is wow, puts hair on your chest. But I will say I love her for it because she understands the market and she understands how hard it is for even established authors to get fiction or nonfiction or memoir book deals right now. Like she gets it. So her stance with most of her clients, is like, well, I don't want this book to go out with any possibility that people are going to say no,
Yeah.
right? She wants auctions.
Mhm.
And what am I going to do? Throw in the towel and be like, no, I want rejections. No, so I match her. I call her like my CrossFit agent. Like the only exercise I do is in my Word doc. Yeah, but it's really hard, and somehow it doesn't seem to be getting easier. But again, that's with the commercial books. The arty novels are just a delight. I call them my mistresses. Like
Oh.
it's all joy because and I'm talking the way I'm talking because now, hopefully this book will be my sixth book, right? I've
Mhm.
not my first time at the rodeo. So like I know whether I'm writing a book that has the potential of nabbing a big five book deal or whether this is an indie book, right? So when
Mhm.
I know that I have an indie book, I also know I'm going to get like little lima beans instead of money, right? And thus, there's not such an impetus for plot, number one, and there's not such an impetus on sales because you don't have to earn back that much. You're just not getting paid very much, right?
Mhm.
So that's a completely different process. Those books I just sort of write and they come out, they just come out, they work. It's a joy and a
Mhm.
pleasure. Involves a lot of research because I like to do historical fiction in my little arty
Mhm.
arty side. Um, but it's not painful. It's a delight.
Do you work on multiple projects at the same
Yeah.
time?
Yeah, so I have to. So when I'm doing a project like this,
Mhm.
CrossFit, hope we get a big five book deal book, it's so difficult for me. And I get very angry. So I have to have a little mistress with me. So I am working on a weird memoir right now, which would definitely is indie.
Mhm.
level book. And yeah, it's like taking an edible, right? It's like that more experimental work
Mhm.
makes it possible for me to function in to drive in a lane that is there's a little road rage in that lane. Like I'm always happy with the final project. I just don't know why after this many decades doing this,
Mhm.
I can't come by plot the first time out. Why do I have to do
Mhm.
27 versions of the book to find the plot? So any frustration that I'm putting out there is not with my agent. It's not even with the industry. It's me. I like, why is it so hard? And I have all the books, right? I have all the like, save the cat, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah, that walk you through like, this needs to happen and this needs to happen. And by the way, I make those things happen in my outlines. And then the minute you leave me alone in my Word doc, all this crazy shit happens. So yeah, I think that I'll never be able to stay on the rate. I just have a very me messy and painful novel writing mm, tradition that I do not wish on anyone. Do not do as I do. It's just terrible.
Well, it all comes out okay in the end.
Well, sure, but the thing is, like people read my books, and again, these like the big five novels, I think are really tight, right? They on the page, you're like, how did she do that? That we just I've always been told that like, oh my God, you wrote such a page turner. And I like pass out. I like leave my body and come back into it. And I'm fairly quick. Like if you look at my publishing rhythm from the outside, right? People be like, oh, this is pretty quick. What is she talking about? How painful can it possibly be if you're publishing every 2 or 3 years? Let me just assure you that is bad. It's still, even if it seems quick and it seems tight, the amount of work and labor and yelling and exercise it took to get me there is not to be trifled with. You
Yeah.
know, it's real. It's not easy for anyone, especially the people who make it look easy. I really
Mhm.
stand up for the best-selling fiction, um, because it's really hard actually to write a page turner, regardless of the genre you're in. It is not easy to write commercial fiction, and I'd like to go on record standing up for my colleagues who write commercial fiction because the minute a plot has entered the building in an important way, I mean, Jesus, take the wheel. It is hard.
I find it so refreshing that you said all that.
I mean, I know there are people out there who I think it probably is easy for them. I'm not one of them. It's not looking like I'll ever be one of them. My agent believes in me. She's like, next time you'll get it. I'm like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? You've read like 57 novels of mine that are never going to become public. I don't know why she thinks I'm going to get it right. I'm not. I feel quite confident that this is just my tradition for the rest of my writing life.
You also do book coaching,
Yes.
and query letter coaching, which
Yes.
sounds
Yeah.
so awesome to me. And you teach workshops and
Yeah.
residencies, and you teach online. Um,
Yeah.
I
I
sort of have
teach people how
a
to
double
not
question
write
here.
like me. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you enjoy most about coaching and teaching? And also tossing in there, what mistake do you see the most
Mm.
in the query letters?
Okay. So what I enjoy most is I think actually is the process or approach that I've developed,
Mm.
which is kind of off the page. It's exceedingly rare, even if I have a long-term coaching client, it's exceedingly rare that I will be reading their entire manuscript. I actually tend to use the query letter, even if they have a book deal.
Mhm.
I use the query letter as um, the main arena in which like our coaching will be focused, and I'll explain why. Writers are very defensive, we're very sensitive, we're very attached to our words. Our feelings are very easily hurt, which is completely understandable, right?
Mhm.
So the minute you're doing line edits, critiquing someone's writing, especially myself, right? Like I'm published. I've got critically acclaimed books, right? So people are hiring me for that, but they also don't want to have their feelings hurt by someone who has what they want, right? So I can use the query letter, and these are not email correspondences, right? They'll send me the query letter, but these are phone calls. And I don't care if the manuscript is completely written or whatever. I will sit with that person and say, hey, the way your summary paragraph makes it sound like there's multiple points of view in this novel, but you haven't stated that. Are there multiple points of view? And then we just talk, and I'm taking wild notes, right? And I'm starting to realize, oh dear, there's too many perspectives, or this person has picked the wrong vehicle and POV for the story, right? Like these are, I'm hearing things. They do like diagnostic scans. And then because I'm not reading, I mean, I'll read a couple pages of it because I have to see the person's actual writing, right? So I'll read like 5 or 10 pages, but that's it. I rarely, rarely do more than that. And that number one, it protects the person from having their feelings too hurt because they can always say to themselves, well, they haven't read the manuscript. Courtney hasn't read the manuscript. So I am in fact a genius, right? But just on the phone, I can start saying like, hey, this memoir query makes it sound like everything you're writing about is in the past. Is there anything in the current? Is there a plot, right? Is what I'm trying to look. Um, and then I'm not pointing at to anything in the manuscript. I'm just asking the person to defend themselves. And often by being asked to answer these questions or defend themselves or whatever it is, they'll come to the realization themselves that, oh wow, like there's my middle lags. There's nothing in the middle, you know? And so I really like that I've sort of broken with tradition. And this is how I run my online classes. This is how I run my destinating writing workshops. We do most of the work off the page, big picture, bird's eye view discussions. And that can really allow the person to find not just the confidence, but the enthusiasm to go back and revise. Where if you just like bash someone's second or third chapter, what's the point? Then they feel deflated. They're too stuck on whatever content you've criticized to see what's working in the larger, they just get too negative and depressed. And so nobody wins. They're mad at you. You've hurt their feelings. You haven't helped them. They don't know how to revise. So I do a lot of the big picture bird's eye view stuff. And then the most common problems, well, I think the most common problem is probably people querying when they're not ready, right? So in memoir and nonfiction, that would look like you haven't published anything in terms of essays or op-eds about the subject your book is on. That doesn't work. You have to be out there in the world in some way. You could have a podcast, you could have a newsletter, whatever, but you need for someone to type in your name. If you're writing a book about birth trauma, the agent needs to be able to type in your name and see that you've published for whatever, Slate, HuffPo, whatever it is on that topic. That's just, you're not ready to query if you haven't started publishing in the realm of what your book is about in nonfiction and fiction. And then in fiction, a lot of times people leave out their personal attachment to the material, which I think is a mistake. So if you've taken years and years to write a novel, it's worth it in your bio paragraph to put in a little line or two about why you wrote this book, especially if it doesn't resemble your life in any way, because that helps the agent or editor see possible angles for media or ways to pitch you for articles and stuff. So people need to be a bit more savvy in their query letters and make sure this is another mistake for both types of, for all genres. People completely leave out media angles. Now, you do not need, especially if it's fiction, like you wouldn't write the possible media angles for my book are X, Y, and Z. You need to hint at them subtly, right? So again, you're pitching a memoir about birth trauma. We need to have an somewhere around your comp titles that we need to be hearing with reproductive rights being stripped, lots of talk about whatever it is, stuff that's in the media trends, the marketplace, a larger marketplace. And you need to feed them the media angles without actually spelling them out. That the media angles are left out all the time. Yeah.
That's great advice. We have a traditional last question.
Mm.
So I'm going to modify it a little bit for you. I normally ask authors when your book is made into a movie or series, what do you think the theme song should be? So for you, I'm interested if you could think of a theme song for your work in general, the writing and publishing and teaching life. Or you can, of course, also pick one of your acclaimed.
Well, I think my theme, I think it has dirty language in it, but it's Rage Against the Machine. Rhymes with duck. Like, duck you, I won't do what they tell
Oh,
me.
that's a good one.
I think that's it. Yeah.
That's a good one. I love that. Courtney Maum, thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your wisdom. It's really been great getting to talk with you.
This has been a very fun discussion.
Thanks for joining us on Literary Prospects. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. We'll see you next time.